I hope this statistic shocks you as much as it did me. About 60% of parents with young children say that they do not enjoy reading to their kids. They say it's not fun. That is absolutely absurd to me. And I want to talk a little bit today about how we as children's book authors can write books that not only kids will enjoy, but parents as well. Let's get into it. By the way, my name is Travis D. Peterson. I am an indie author coach specializing in children's books. I'm also an author myself, and I am a book designer. And I love to help authors like you find confidence, gain clarity, and achieve success in books that not only kids will love, but adults will cherish. And I want to put a little bit of emphasis on that adults will cherish. You know, if you think about your childhood, there's probably a book or two, maybe more, that you cherish from your childhood. And I believe that if kids love your book, they're going to cherish it when they become adults as well. But at the same time, if kids love your book and the adults, their parents love your book as well as they're reading it to their kids, then they're going to love it now. So yeah, I love to help authors write books that kids will love and adults will cherish. Now, let's talk a little bit about the statistic that I mentioned. It was actually a recent survey that was run by HarperCollins UK. So it is a UK-based survey. I don't know how it relates to the United States or other countries. I would love to have that information. But basically, this recent article from the end of April 30th, 2025, said that about 60% of parents with children 13 years old or younger say that reading aloud to their children is not fun for them. Basically, I'm giving the opposite of that. They actually said that 40% say it is enjoyable or it is fun for them to read to their kids. So, you know, do the math, about 60% say that it's not fun for them. Over half of parents of young children say it's not fun to read to their kids. There were a couple of different reasons that they gave in the article. One was that the Generation Z, which makes up of those born roughly between 1997 and 2012. Gen Z are kind of the generation that make up parents of young children now. And it's interesting that Gen Z, if they were born around 1997, they are the first generation to exist completely in the internet age. You think about how technology and the internet and digital devices have really shaped our culture and how it's become so prevalent in our society. No wonder it has had an influence on how we read and how we enjoy reading. Maybe these parents, they just enjoy video or video games or other digital technology more than picking up a book and reading it. And how that influences not only how they read to their kids, but it's going to influence how their kids look at books and how they enjoy reading or not. That's just fascinating to me, how this whole generation is influencing how we read books and if we enjoy it or not. The second reason that they gave was they said that over half of the parents in this survey said that their children had too much homework to read books for pleasure. What they said is mainly all the reading that their kids do are learning for a learning purpose. They're reading for education rather than for pleasure, for their homework, for schoolwork. It's just so much learning focused reading. And so then it puts this bad taste in their mouth for reading, and they just don't even want to read for fun, because reading is associated with learning. They said about 29% of children think reading is more for learning than for pleasure. That's also an interesting outlook on this survey, and something to think about. And we're going to get into that a little bit in our discussion today. But the very last thing I wanted to share, and I thought this was interesting as well, 34% of parents said that they wish they had more time to read to their kids. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think these 34% of parents that wish they had more time to read to their kids, do you think these are parents that actually enjoy reading to their kids? Or is it the ones who say it's not fun? I imagine it's that small percentage of 40% who actually enjoy reading to their kids that are also saying, we wish we had more time to do it. That's very interesting. So, our families, they are more busy now. We have sports activities and social activities and all things. Everything is pulling us in multiple directions. There's just no time to read to our kids, apparently. So this is just really fascinating to me. And what I really want to introduce to you is how we as authors can write books that parents enjoy reading to their children. And I want to give you 6 different ways we can do that. And if you've been following me, which, by the way, about 85% of you are not subscribed to my channel. So please, if you're watching this and you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe and hit the like button, follow along. But if you have been following me for a while, you may have heard me mention something called the primer formula. This is a special formula that I have developed to help authors really kind of set a litmus test, so to speak, for their book to see if it could be a successful book or not. And it takes 6 buckets of really topics or categories that we look at to see if it is a successfully written and published book, or at least in the process of getting there, if you understand. Now, these 6 buckets are plot, readability, illustration, message, entertainment, by the way, which is kind of the topic of today, but I also like to say edutainment, and finally, representation. So I'm going to look at all 6 of these different buckets as part of the primer formula and see how we can write better books that children and parents enjoy reading. The very first is, number 1, engage parents with a solid plot. One way we can do this is, not only are we writing books for children, but we're writing books for their parents. And so how can we engage them in the plot? I think this is where, simple things like plot twists and surprises and cliffhangers, things like that, where you really grab the attention of the reader and they want to read, they want to keep flipping the page. Even if it's a 32-page picture book, it keeps them going until the end. I think that's so necessary with children's books. It's obviously, novel writers, they know how to do this well. I was reading a series of books recently where to my 10-year-old son, and every chapter ending had a cliffhanger that wanted us both to keep going. And he hated it when I would say, sorry, we need to close the book now. It's time for bed. But we really need to be able to do the same thing with picture books. We need to keep them so engaged, not only the kids, but the parents as well, that you want to keep turning the page. Number 2 is give permission to parents to playfully read the book aloud. Have you ever read a book that was just sort of boring to read out loud? I think this goes a lot into the plot as well. I think it's connected to that, but you can also do things like build in some voice opportunities, like, maybe there's different accents or catchphrases that characters enjoy saying, or, different ways that the parents can kind of play with the the dynamics of the language in the book and how the characters are speaking, different speech patterns and accents and dialogue between characters, things like that. You can also add interactive elements, things like sound effects and changes in volume. Maybe it's really quiet and then they're shouting, different things like that, or, specific physical prompts. I tried to grab a copy of a book that we have and I couldn't find it, but it's called Don't Push the Button. You may be familiar with it. It's a board book for us. So it was one that our kids enjoyed when they were smaller, but it's basically this monster that he's the main character of this series of books. Actually, Don't Push the Button was the first one. And on every spread of the book, there's this large illustrated button. And the whole point is, if you push the button, something's going to happen. Something crazy is going to happen in the story. So it's very interactive. The monster, he's the only character, technically the only character in the book, and he's talking directly to the reader. He's looking at you. And so I think the phrase is breaking the fourth wall, where it's kind of interactive with the character and the reader. And so he's telling you, don't push the button. And of course, you end up pushing the button and crazy things happen in the story. It's really fun, really interactive. And so things like that, think of ways to be interactive. Think of those, like I said, the sound effects or changes in volume where the reader can interact a bit with the story. Great things to have. The other thing is rhythm and rhyme. Like if you're writing in rhyme and meter, that naturally creates sort of this musical quality to the story that just helps parents feel like they're performing in a way. So it's just a good way to help parents kind of feel like they're adding to the story a bit. The third way, that we can write better books for parents to enjoy is to engage their imaginations through the artwork. One thing I like to say is that the illustrations of your book should be a window and not a mirror. What do I mean by that? Well, if the illustrations are a mirror, then they're just reflecting your words. They're reflecting your manuscript. And so they may, your manuscript may describe characters or scenes in the story, and then the illustrations are an exact replica of your description. Or you got this story and the illustrations are, very specific to your story, and there's nothing that takes them beyond what they could just read. Does that make sense? There's a pretty common phrase, show, don't tell. So a lot of things in your book can be shown in the artwork rather than just spoken through the manuscript. And so you don't want the illustrations to just be a mirror. You want them to be a window. You want the illustrations to open the story up to a new dimension that takes them past your words to see other elements and aspects of the story that aren't just in your manuscript. I've talked about this with previous books or previous videos before. Eric Novak is someone that I had on my podcast show here on YouTube. And he, his title isn't coming to me, but throughout the book were very different from the manuscript itself. And it kind of told its own story along with the manuscript. Now, his manuscript wasn't like a fictional story from beginning to end. It was more descriptive in a way. So it was easier to have sort of these two different storylines going, the one from the text and the one from the illustration. But I think it was a very innovative way of creating a book that really tells two different stories. So it might be worth checking out. And I'll be sure to link that video in the description so you can watch it. But also, it's just, like I said, you want to have the illustrations open up a window to a new way of thinking, a new dimension to the story that is not just read in the text. So, number 4, the fourth reason or the fourth way that you can make sure your book will be fun for parents to read is to encourage connection and conversation in your message. Write stories that naturally lead to discussions about values and dreams. It's so easy for us to want to base our book on a message or base our book on a value, and that's great, but you want to sort of do it in a natural way. Support strong relationships between characters. In other words, avoid stereotypes like incompetent dads and things like that. That actually, might go more into the last one where I talk about representation, but I like it here as well because you don't want your message to give off the wrong vibe or give off these stereotypes that don't really belong in children's books anymore. So write books that just sort of naturally take you to the message you want to share. It's not something that's forced. It's not something that you're just trying to get this point across and it reads that way in the story. You want to write something that they'll actually enjoy reading, and in the process, they receive the message, whether it's very specifically stated in the story or it's just kind of in the background. It's something that they hear subconsciously in a way. Yeah. Number 5 is provide a balance of education and entertainment. Now, I said the 5th bucket in the primer formula is entertainment, but I also like to call it edutainment because I think both are important, and it requires a balance. It's okay to have an educational book, but I think it's even more important for it to be entertaining. So even a textbook, in a way, needs to have some value of entertainment. I think entertainment is actually more important for picture books than education is, which is strange for me to say because all my books so far have had some element of education, but this is really teaching me that I need to maybe change my focus a little bit. Yes, education is great. Having a nice message is great, but the entertainment value of the book really needs to shine through more than the lesson, the message, the value, the moral that you're trying to give. You want that to sort of be a natural occurrence rather than something that is forced. Not all books need to be educational, but they should be entertaining. Now, so one thing you can do as an author is establish an entertainment first principle. Now, of course, unless you're writing curriculum, then curriculum should be educational first. But if it's not curriculum, then try to establish the entertainment value first. And the way you can do that is lead with the story and let learning follow naturally. Not every page needs to be a lesson. You can just sort of sprinkle some educational elements to it here and there in the story, but let it flow naturally. I've got a book here that was done by a friend of mine, and I'm actually the designer of the book. This is Mighty Mila by Katie Patriciello. I've had her on the podcast as well, but she has a daughter with cochlear implants, and I also have a daughter with cochlear implants. So we have that nice connection, and one good reason for us to sort of work together on this book. And now she has a sequel out to this book as well. But it's such a cute, fun story, sort of about Mila growing up and trying to become a big kid, but in the midst of it, you learn little tidbits about things that kids with cochlear implants need to keep in mind and things they need to learn. And so it's not fully focused on the learning aspect, but you just kind of learn those things throughout the story. It's a great way to bring awareness to a subject without it being on the forefront of the mind of the reader, knowing that, okay, this is, I'm learning right now. I'm not really enjoying it. I'm not really reading for pleasure. So she really did a great job of writing that story. So I just wanted to share that. So how are you writing books that are, even if they're educational, even if there is a lesson, how are you making it a more natural occurrence rather than forcing the issue? Now, the sixth and very last bucket in the primal formula is representation. And usually when I talk about this, I talk about actually things like illnesses and disabilities and also cultural minorities, things like that. How can you represent them well? And that's kind of what I spoke about, stereotypes earlier. That can also be something that you have to watch out for in representation. But in this case, what I want to say is you want to represent the reader by allowing them to see themselves in the characters. So characters need to be relatable. Even animals or monsters can have human qualities. And you want to be able to include things like emotion and feelings and imperfections even. I'm on this journey now where I think we as authors need to embrace imperfection in our books, but also show that in your character, because that brings a human aspect to our characters that we really need to see in books. And then show the social connection between the characters as well. These are all ways that you can kind of allow the reader to connect to the characters in a way that the characters remind them of themselves, which makes that more enjoyable for not only the kid, but the parent as well. So those are the 6 ways that you can write a book that kids and parents will enjoy. But it really boils down to 2 things that I want to share. And that is, we need to help them build connections and conversations with each other. And we need to help them build imaginations. I really think that if we can sort of facilitate those 2 things between parents and kids, or grandparents and kids, that they feel connected and that they are able to explore their imaginations together, that is the key for parents to enjoy that time together with their kids, because it sort of brings them closer together. It's not just sort of this activity they do in the afternoons or in the evenings. And, you can't really gain anything from it, but all of a sudden it creates sort of this intimate moment between the parent and the child. And those memories are going to last a lifetime, not only for the parents, but for the kids. So find a way that you can strengthen that bond, that connection between the parent and the child. And through conversations, maybe the story sort of naturally causes a conversation between the parent and the child. Maybe there are questions that come up that they can talk about, different things like that, but also it sparks their imaginations together. So just if I could sum up all 6 of these buckets into 2 things, it would be help the reader develop and strengthen and build their connection with their kid and build imaginations together. So I want to leave you with just a quick little author litmus test that you can go through with your manuscript or even your published book. Maybe you've got several books out and you're just not doing well and wondering what the problem is. You can kind of judge by this litmus test 6 quick things based on what we've already talked about. Is my book a page turner? Is my book a page turner? Does it include the plot twists, the cliffhangers, the things that really grip your attention? Does my book give permission for playful reading? Is there fun dialogue, some different accents or speech patterns within the dialogue? Does my artwork in the book take the story to a new dimension? Number 4, does my book encourage connections and conversations? Number 5, does my book balance education and entertainment? And number 6, can the reader see themselves in the characters? I hope you'll go through these and really use it as a test for your own book to see how you judge. I would love to hear in the comments which one you feel like you need to work on in the manuscript you're working on now or the next one. Which of those 6 things do you feel like you need to work on? Because if you can say yes to all of these things, then you have a solid book that even parents will enjoy reading. I am about to launch a brand new book for children's book authors to help you through the process from writing the book, having a finished manuscript, all the way to completing the book for publishing as an indie author. The title is The Indie Author's Dozen, and you can grab the introduction chapter pre-editing. I need to send it to an editor soon. I'm trying to wrap up my own self-editing now, but you can grab the introduction chapter and check it out right now at indieauthorsdozen.com. I hope you'll grab that. Let me know what you think. Again, let me know in the comments which of these 6 buckets you need to work on for your next manuscript, and I would love to hear that.